From Panic to Peace, How Ancient Buddhist Teachings Can Set You Free. Introduction: The Silent War Within. Anxiety is a silent war that rages inside countless minds, often unseen, often misunderstood. It whispers in the quiet moments, hijacks our thoughts in crowded rooms, and tightens its grip when we least expect it. Some feel it as a gnawing sense of unease, others as paralyzing fear that makes even the smallest decisions feel impossible. If you've ever felt trapped in a web of worry, drowning in what-ifs and worst-case scenarios, you are not alone, and more importantly, you are not powerless. Now imagine this: what if the key to breaking free from anxiety isn't in more productivity hacks, more medication, or another temporary distraction, but in something far more ancient, profound, and surprisingly practical? Over 2,500 years ago, a prince-turned-monk named Siddhartha Gautama, whom the world now knows as the Buddha, shared a path to freedom that was not based on escaping life's challenges, but transforming our relationship with them. His teachings weren't aimed solely at monks and monasteries. They were meant for everyone, for the overworked parent, the anxious student, the heartbroken lover, and the lost soul searching for peace in a chaotic world. This isn't just spiritual philosophy, it's psychological liberation wrapped in timeless wisdom. And today, that wisdom is more relevant than ever. In this article, you will discover how key teachings from Buddhism, such as mindfulness, meditation, detachment, compassion, and the understanding of impermanence, can be applied to your everyday life to loosen anxiety's grip on your heart and mind. But this isn't just a rehash of ancient texts. Along the way, we'll explore real-life stories, modern applications, and personal reflections that bring these teachings to life. What you're about to read is not a sermon. It's a roadmap, from fear to freedom, from panic to peace. By the end of this journey, you won't just understand anxiety better. You'll carry with you tools, rooted in ancient truth, sharpened by experience, that you can use anytime, anywhere. Take a deep breath. Let's begin. Part 1, The Power of Mindfulness, Returning to the Now. It sounds so simple: be here, now. But in reality, our minds are rarely where our feet are. Most of us live either in the past, regretting what we said, what we didn't do, what we lost, or in the future, rehearsing worries like scripts of a movie we dread to watch. Anxiety thrives in those spaces, in the ghosts of what was and the shadows of what might be. But the present moment? That's where anxiety struggles to survive. Mindfulness is not an escape, it's a return. The Buddha taught that much of our suffering doesn't come from events themselves, but from how our minds interpret and react to them. That's where mindfulness becomes revolutionary. It is not a passive practice. It's an act of courage. Mindfulness doesn't mean clearing the mind or pretending problems don't exist. It means watching the mind, becoming an observer rather than a prisoner of your own thoughts. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, I sat in a hospital waiting room, awaiting test results that could have changed my life. My mind, like a runaway train, was crashing through thoughts. What if it's cancer? What if I didn't catch it in time? The panic was loud. But something clicked. I remembered what I had learned through Buddhist practice. I brought my attention to the breath. Inhale, exhale. I focused on the sensation of sitting, the rhythm of breathing, the texture of the chair beneath me. For those few moments, I wasn't drowning in fear, I was grounded. The situation hadn't changed. But I had. That's the power of mindfulness. It doesn't eliminate pain, it transforms your relationship with it. Mindfulness is a muscle, not a magic trick. People often try mindfulness once or twice and say, "It didn't work for me." But mindfulness isn't something you use like a tool. It's something you become through repetition. Start small. When eating, just eat. Taste every bite. When walking, just walk. Feel your feet meet the ground. When breathing, just breathe. Follow the breath without trying to change it. You don't need incense, a meditation cushion, or a mountaintop retreat. You need only this moment and your willingness to meet it without judgment. Mindfulness is the beginning of freedom. When you become mindful, you realize something extraordinary. You are not your thoughts. Your anxious thoughts aren't prophecies. They're just passing clouds. You are the sky. This realization creates space between stimulus and response, between thought and reaction. And in that space is where your power lives. The power to choose presence over panic. Peace over projection. Mindfulness also invites us to shift our focus from what is wrong to what is real. That's where gratitude comes in. It's hard to feel anxious when you're fully immersed in the sound of birds, the warmth of sunlight, the miracle of breath. Part 2, Meditation, Building the Inner Sanctuary. In the chaos of everyday life, we often seek refuge in distractions, our phones, TV shows, busy schedules. But what if the most powerful sanctuary isn't somewhere outside you, but within you? Meditation is the doorway to that inner sanctuary. It's not a spiritual luxury reserved for monks or mystics, it's a skill. And like any skill, it improves with practice, patience, and presence. The biggest misconception: I can't meditate. How many times have you heard or thought, I tried meditating, but I couldn't stop thinking. I'm too restless for meditation. My mind is too noisy. Here's the truth. You don't need to stop thinking to meditate. You only need to notice that you're thinking. Thoughts are not the enemy. They are natural. Even seasoned meditators experience wandering minds. The difference is, they don't fight the thoughts, they observe them. The goal of meditation isn't to force the mind to be silent. It's to become aware of the noise without being controlled by it. Let me share a story. During the height of my anxiety, I tried meditating for the first time. I sat on the floor, closed my eyes, and within seconds, a flood of thoughts overwhelmed me. You're doing it wrong. This is pointless. You're wasting time. But instead of getting up, I stayed. I started labeling each thought, worry, fear, doubt, and imagined each one as a leaf floating down a stream. That 10-minute session didn't cure me. But it cracked open something important, a gap between me and my thoughts. And from that gap, calmness started to seep in. 2 simple types of meditation, and why they matter. 1. Samatha, calm abiding meditation. Focus on a single object, like the breath. It trains the mind to return whenever it wanders. Each return is a push-up for your mental muscles. 2. Vipassana, insight meditation. Observe everything, body sensations, thoughts, emotions, without judgment. It reveals the impermanence of all experiences. You learn that even anxiety is just a visitor, not your identity. In both practices, the key is the same: awareness without attachment. If you're just starting, try this. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Focus on your breath. Inhale. Exhale. When your mind wanders, and it will, gently bring it back. No judgment. Just return. That's it. Why meditation changes everything. Neuroscience now backs what ancient sages have taught for millennia. Regular meditation literally rewires your brain. Reduces activity in the default mode network, responsible for worry and rumination. Strengthens the prefrontal cortex, linked to emotional regulation. Lowers stress hormones like cortisol. And more importantly, meditation teaches you a radical truth. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. That one insight can unshackle you from the grip of anxiety. Imagine no longer being swept away by every fearful story your mind invents. Imagine sitting calmly, watching thoughts come and go, like watching clouds pass in the sky. That is the freedom meditation offers. Part 3, Detachment, letting go to be free. Most of us live with an invisible script playing in the background of our minds. I need this job to feel secure. I need this relationship to feel loved. I need this situation to go exactly the way I planned, or I'll fall apart. We grip tightly onto people, outcomes, identities, hoping that if we hold on hard enough, we can keep anxiety at bay. But ironically, it's this very clinging that often creates our anxiety. The Buddhist view, suffering is born from attachment. In Buddhism, attachment isn't just about material things. It's any mental or emotional fixation that says, I can't be okay unless this stays the same. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering. When we cling to things that are inevitably impermanent, relationships, careers, status, even ideas, we set ourselves up for stress, disappointment, and fear. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. You love fully, but without possession. You plan wisely, but without obsession. You dream boldly, but without demanding certainty. A story of clinging and release. Let me tell you about Sarah, a client I once worked with during a mindfulness retreat. She was a brilliant graphic designer who had poured her identity into her career. When she lost her job during a round of layoffs, she spiraled into panic and depression. I don't know who I am without it, she told me. My entire sense of worth was tied to that title. Through guided meditation and Buddhist inquiry, she began to unravel the root of her suffering, not the loss itself, but her attachment to a specific identity. Over time, she learned to observe her thoughts rather than be consumed by them. She started volunteering, then freelancing, then eventually launched her own creative project. Her peace didn't come from getting back what she lost. It came from releasing the belief that she needed it to be whole. Letting go doesn't mean losing everything. Many people fear detachment because it sounds cold, passive, or indifferent. But in Buddhist wisdom, true detachment is a liberating clarity. It allows you to love without fear, act without control, and experience life as it is, not as you wish it would be. Here's how to begin practicing detachment in everyday life. 1. Notice where you're clinging. Is it a belief that you must be successful? A fear of being alone? A need for approval? 2. Question the belief. Ask, what am I afraid would happen if I let go? Most of the time, what we fear is not as catastrophic as it feels. 3. Practice letting go gently. Try not to force detachment. Instead, bring awareness to your clinging and allow yourself to loosen your grip over time. 4. Use mindfulness as an anchor. The more present you are, the less you'll feel the need to control. 5. Repeat this mantra. I can care deeply and still let go. Detachment heals relationships too. One of the most transformative applications of detachment is in how we relate to others. When we cling to someone, expecting them to complete us, never change, or behave a certain way, we burden the relationship with unrealistic demands. Non-attachment in love means you don't try to own or fix the other person. You love them as they are, not as you wish they'd be. This doesn't mean staying in unhealthy relationships. Detachment also gives you the clarity and strength to walk away when needed, not from bitterness, but from self-respect. Part 4, Compassion, the key to inner and outer healing. When we think about healing anxiety, we often imagine techniques that quiet the mind or regulate the body. But there's another path, gentler, deeper, and often overlooked. It doesn't start with breathing exercises or posture. It begins with a kind word to yourself. Compassion, in its truest form, is not soft or sentimental. It is a radical act of healing, especially when it's directed inward. Self-compassion, the beginning of inner peace. One of the cruelest aspects of anxiety is not just the fear, it's the self-blame that comes with it. Why can't I just calm down? What's wrong with me? Everyone else seems to handle life better. This inner critic masquerades as motivation, but it only deepens the wound. Buddhism teaches that before we can extend compassion to the world, we must first offer it to ourselves. Self-compassion means meeting your own suffering with the same tenderness you would offer a dear friend. It means recognizing that being human is messy, emotional, and difficult, and that's okay. Let me tell you about Diego, a former athlete who struggled with panic attacks after a career-ending injury. For months, he pushed himself to toughen up, pretending nothing was wrong. But the more he resisted his pain, the louder it screamed. When Diego began practicing metta-meditation, repeating phrases like, "May I be safe. May I be at ease." Something shifted. He cried. Not because he was weak, but because, for the first time, he allowed himself to feel without judgment. That's the power of compassion. It melts the armor of shame. Compassion for others softens the edges of anxiety. Anxiety often pulls us inward, trapping us in a loop of self-focused worry. But compassion pulls us outward. It reminds us that we are not alone. Everyone is fighting some invisible battle. The coworker who snapped at you might be caring for a sick parent. The stranger who cut you off in traffic may be rushing to the ER. The friend who disappeared might be quietly drowning in their own fears. When we choose to see others through the lens of compassion, we dissolve the illusion of separation. And when we feel connected, anxiety loses its grip. Compassion doesn't mean taking on everyone's burdens or fixing their problems. It simply means wishing them peace and offering kindness where you can, through presence, words, or silence. Be kind, the Buddha said, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. Conflict as a gateway to compassion. One of the greatest tests of compassion is how we respond in moments of conflict. When anxious, we tend to react defensively, snapping back, shutting down, or avoiding. But with compassion, we pause. We breathe. We listen, not just to defend ourselves, but to understand the other. Try this next time you're in a heated moment. 1. Take one breath before speaking. 2. Ask yourself, what is this person really needing right now? Connection? Safety? To feel heard? 3. Respond from understanding, not reactivity. Compassion doesn't always mean agreeing. But it always means respecting the shared humanity behind the disagreement. Forgiveness, releasing the poison of resentment. Buddhist compassion also teaches us the power of forgiveness. Not to excuse harm, but to set ourselves free from the chains of anger. Holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. It feeds anxiety, not peace. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. You don't need to tell the person, or even reconcile. You just need to say, I choose not to carry this pain anymore. Simple compassion practices to try today. Metta meditation. Start with yourself. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. Then extend it to someone you love. Then to someone neutral. Then to someone you struggle with. Finally, to all beings everywhere. Small acts of kindness. Send a kind text. Hold the door. Smile. Listen without interrupting. These tiny gestures ripple outward and inward. Self-soothing touch. When anxious, place your hand gently over your heart. Say inwardly, I'm here. It's okay to feel this. Part 5. Managing stress with Buddhist wisdom, turning pressure into peace. Stress, in its raw form, is energy. Sometimes it motivates us, pushes us to act, alerts us to danger. But when unmanaged, it becomes chronic tension, tightening the chest, clouding the mind, and wearing down the soul. In the modern world, stress feels inescapable. Work deadlines, relationship struggles, financial uncertainty, these are real. But what if stress isn't the problem? What if it's how we relate to stress that determines whether it consumes or refines us? Understanding the roots of stress. Buddhism doesn't treat stress as a pathology, it treats it as a signal. A red flag waving from the mind saying, you're clinging to something. At the heart of most stress is attachment. Attachment to outcomes. Attachment to success or approval. Attachment to comfort, to security, to a specific version of how life should be. When life doesn't match those attachments, we resist. That resistance is stress. The Buddha put it simply. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Stress is part of life. Suffering happens when we fight the reality of what is. Stress is a mirror. What are you holding on to? Let me share a story. Nina was a school principal who came to one of my workshops on mindfulness. She was brilliant, passionate, and on the verge of burnout. Her stress levels were sky high, not because she didn't care, but because she cared too much and felt responsible for every outcome. We sat down and explored her beliefs. I must be available 24/7. If one thing goes wrong, I've failed. If I stop, everything will fall apart. These weren't just thoughts, they were attachments. As she began practicing meditation and mindful reflection, she started to untangle herself from those ideas. She didn't stop caring. She stopped clinging. And what happened? She became more effective, more peaceful, and even more respected, not in spite of letting go, but because of it. Mindfulness, the antidote to stress. When we're stressed, our mind is usually racing, future tripping with worst-case scenarios or rehashing past failures. Mindfulness anchors us in the now, where stress can't spiral out of control. Try this the next time you're overwhelmed. 1. Pause. 2. Take 3 deep breaths. 3. Ask yourself, what am I holding on to right now? 4. Acknowledge it without judgment. 5. Say inwardly, I see you. I don't need to fight you. Even a few seconds of mindful awareness can break the feedback loop of stress. Shift the inner dialogue. Our inner narrative often fuels stress. I have to do it all. I can't mess this up. They'll think I'm a failure. Replace these with Buddhist-informed reframes. I will do what I can with presence and care. Mistakes are part of learning, not signs of failure. My worth isn't based on outcomes. Words matter. The voice you hear most is your own. Make it gentle. Loving kindness in stressful moments. When we're under pressure, our default reaction is often harshness toward ourselves or others. Buddhism offers us a counterintuitive approach, compassion even in the fire. In a tense moment, place your hand over your heart or take a grounding breath and silently say, may I meet this moment with kindness. It's not weakness. It's wisdom. Compassion softens the edges of stress and builds resilience from the inside out. Everyday stress relief practices, inspired by Buddhism. Walking meditation. Walk slowly. Feel your feet touch the earth. Sync your breath with your steps. Each step becomes a step away from stress and toward presence. Tea meditation. Brew a cup of tea. Feel the warmth. Taste slowly. Let it be a ritual of returning to stillness. 1-minute reset. Every few hours, stop what you're doing. Close your eyes. Breathe. Nothing else. A small pause can create a huge shift. Journaling for awareness. Write down your top 3 stressors. Then next to each one, write, what am I attached to here? Often, what we uncover is surprising and freeing. Part 6, Karma and Responsibility, Taking Back Your Power. When people hear the word karma, they often think of it as cosmic punishment or spiritual revenge. What goes around comes around. But in Buddhism, karma isn't about judgment. It's about cause and effect, plain and simple. Every thought, word, and action plants a seed. And over time, those seeds bloom into joy or suffering. In this way, karma is not a sentence. It's a mirror, a compass. And most importantly, it's empowering. You are not powerless, you are a creator. One of the most anxiety-producing thoughts is, I have no control. But karma teaches the opposite. You do have control, not over life circumstances, but over your reactions, your intentions, and your energy. In every moment, you are shaping your future. Not with magical thinking, but through presence, integrity, and kindness. This shifts anxiety in a profound way. Instead of feeling like life is happening to you, you start to realize that life is happening through you. Your responses to pain, fear, and uncertainty are what determine whether you spiral deeper or rise above. The quiet power of microactions. Karma isn't just created in grand gestures. It's born in tiny choices. Choosing patience instead of snapping in frustration. Choosing honesty when lying feels easier. Choosing to pause and breathe instead of reacting on impulse. choosing compassion when judgment rushes in. Each choice becomes a thread in the fabric of your future. And over time, those threads form a tapestry of either tension or peace. Let me share a personal story. Years ago, I was working in a fast-paced office where the culture was competitive and toxic. Every day I'd come home tense, resentful, and mentally drained. I blamed the job, the coworkers, the pressure. But something shifted when I began integrating Buddhist karma into my mindset. I asked myself, what am I bringing to this energy field? Instead of matching the chaos, I started practicing mindfulness during breaks. I began responding instead of reacting. I showed kindness where I used to offer sarcasm. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the environment began to shift. Not because I changed them, but because I changed me. The stress didn't vanish, but my relationship to it transformed. That was karma at work, not fate, but responsibility. Responsibility isn't blame, it's power. It's easy to hear you're responsible for your experience and feel guilt or pressure. But responsibility isn't about blaming yourself for your anxiety. It's about reclaiming your power to change the narrative. You can't control every thought that arises. But you can choose how you engage with it. You can't control your partner's mood. But you can choose whether to meet it with resistance or compassion. You can't predict the economy, but you can choose how much peace you sacrifice to worry about it. Every mindful response rewires the mind. Every act of self-kindness builds emotional muscle. Every choice rooted in awareness creates ripples far beyond that moment. Creating inner karma through self-treatment. One overlooked aspect of karma is how we treat ourselves. Harsh self-criticism, negative karma. Self-compassion and forgiveness, positive karma. Every time you speak to yourself with kindness, you plant seeds of safety and worth within. And those seeds influence how you treat others, how you handle challenges, and how you see the world. Start by noticing your self-talk. Ask, would I say this to a child? To someone I love? If the answer is no, change the tone. Not because it's nice, but because it's wise. Simple karma practices for daily life. Intentional mornings. Start your day by setting an intention. Today, I choose presence over panic. Compassion over criticism. Reflective evenings. Before bed, reflect. What kind of energy did I put into the world today? Not to judge, but to gently course correct. Silent acts of goodness. Hold the door. Pick up litter. Say a kind word. Expect nothing in return. These small deeds return in ways you'll never predict. Part 7, Impermanence, Learning to Flow with Life. What if I told you that the very thing you fear the most, change, could actually be your greatest source of peace? We fear change because we crave stability. We want our relationships, our careers, our bodies, and even our emotions to stay predictable. But life has a different rhythm. It breathes in cycles, not straight lines. In Buddhism, this truth is captured in a single word, anicca, impermanence. It may sound like a cold truth at first. But once embraced, it becomes the softest, kindest, most liberating insight of all. Everything changes, and that's okay. Look around you, seasons shift, bodies age, emotions rise and fall, relationships evolve. The same is true inside us. No fear, no joy, no panic, no ecstasy ever stays forever. Yet we suffer when we try to freeze the moment, when we cling to a temporary state and pretend it will last. We want happiness to stay. We want pain to go away instantly. We want love to never change. We want anxiety to be cured, now. But impermanence whispers a deeper truth. This too shall pass. And that's not a threat. It's a promise. How impermanence heals anxiety. Anxiety thrives on the illusion of permanence. What if I always feel this way? What if this never ends? What if I never get better? But when we remember impermanence, we realize no feeling lasts forever. Not even fear. Think back to a moment of deep panic you experienced years ago. Did it last? Or did it pass, like a storm rolling through? Realizing that emotions are weather, not identity, allows us to sit with discomfort instead of fighting it. And often, the more we sit with it, the faster it moves through us. Let me share an example. A young man named Rami came to a retreat I was teaching. He'd recently gone through a painful breakup and was paralyzed by the thought, "I'll never love again." He believed his loneliness would last forever. Through daily mindfulness and journaling, he began to notice the micro-shifts in his emotions. Some days were heavy. Some days brought unexpected lightness. He started to see his emotional state not as permanent reality, but as temporary weather. He didn't need to escape the storm. He just needed to learn how to stand in the rain without drowning. 6 months later, he told me something I'll never forget. It wasn't the pain that broke me. It was believing it would never end. Once I stopped believing that, I began to heal. Impermanence makes life more precious. Yes, impermanence means things change. But that's also what makes every moment sacred. The laughter of your child? It won't sound like that forever. The blooming tree outside your window? Here today, gone next season. The tears in your eyes? They're not forever either. When you understand that nothing lasts, you stop sleepwalking through life. You start showing up, fully, gratefully, tenderly. You love deeper, not because things last, but because you know they don't. That awareness turns every ordinary moment into a miracle. A practice of letting go and letting flow. The next time you feel anxious or afraid, try this short reflection. 1. Sit quietly. 2. Bring your awareness to your breath. 3. Say to yourself softly, with each exhale, "This is temporary. This too will pass." Do this for 3 minutes. Feel the truth of impermanence settle into your body. You're not ignoring the pain. You're accepting its place in time, a visitor, not a permanent resident. Simple ways to embrace impermanence daily. Watch the sky. Let clouds remind you, nothing stays the same. Take mindful photos. Capture everyday beauty, not to hold on, but to witness its passing. Declutter something. Release an old object as a physical symbol of your capacity to let go. Celebrate small joys. Drink tea like it's the last cup. Hug like it's the last embrace. One day, it will be. And that's what makes it beautiful. Part 8. Integration, bringing Buddhist wisdom into everyday life. We've come a long way on this journey, through mindfulness and meditation, detachment and compassion, karma and impermanence. These teachings are ancient, but their value is more relevant than ever. Now comes the most important question of all. How do we live this wisdom? It's one thing to understand these ideas. It's another to let them shape your everyday reality, how you breathe, how you speak, how you respond to chaos, how you treat yourself and others. The good news is, you don't need to change your life to begin. You only need to change the way you show up to your life. Wisdom in the ordinary. You don't have to live in a monastery or meditate for hours to embody Buddhist principles. You can. Practice mindfulness while brushing your teeth, drinking your morning coffee, or walking to work. Meditate for 5 minutes before bed, letting go of the day's tension. Show compassion in a text message, a smile, or a pause before reacting. Let go of attachment when things don't go as planned. Remember impermanence in moments of both beauty and pain. These small acts, repeated daily, will transform your inner landscape. A sample mindful day, yes, even with a busy schedule. Morning, 5 minutes sit, breathe, and set an intention. Today, I meet the world with presence and kindness. Midday, 1 minute while eating lunch, put away distractions. Chew slowly. Taste. Be here. Afternoon, when stress arises, pause. Inhale deeply. Ask yourself, what am I clinging to right now? Then exhale and release. Evening, 5 minutes reflect. Or what moments brought peace? Or when did I lose presence? Or what do I forgive in myself today? This isn't about perfection. It's about awareness. Even one mindful moment in a day of chaos is a victory. You are already on the path. If you've read this far, you are not starting from zero. You've already begun the most important journey of all, the journey inward. Toward your own stillness. Toward clarity. Toward freedom. And like all spiritual paths, this one unfolds one step at a time. Some days will feel inspired. Others may feel like setbacks. But in Buddhism, even the stumbles are sacred. Even the confusion is part of the awakening. The path is not in the sky, the Buddha said. The path is in the heart. You don't need to know everything. You only need to practice with sincerity. Final reflections, a life beyond anxiety. Let's return to where we began. Have you ever felt trapped by anxiety? If the answer is yes, take heart. Because now you carry within you a toolkit, sharpened by timeless wisdom and softened by deep compassion. Mindfulness helps you anchor in the present. Meditation builds stillness in a noisy world. Detachment frees you from unnecessary suffering. Compassion opens your heart to yourself and others. Karma reminds you of your power to shape each moment. Impermanence gives you the courage to let go. These are not abstract ideas. They are living practices, waiting to be invited into your next breath, your next decision, your next moment of doubt. Will you fall back into old patterns sometimes? Of course. But now you know how to return. Return to the breath. Return to presence. Return to peace. That's what it means to be truly free, not from the world, but within it. A final blessing. May you walk gently through your days, with eyes wide open and a heart unafraid. May you greet your thoughts with compassion, your fears with understanding, and your life with love. May you remember, you are not your anxiety. You are the awareness behind it. And you are already whole. Thank you for taking this journey. If this message spoke to your heart, consider sharing it with someone who needs it. Peace begins with one mindful moment. Let this be yours.